Beyond Birth and Death by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. Is there life after death? India's most renowned Vedic authority presents startling evidence of the soul's incredible journey after death. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda tells how the soul travels from body to body and how we can end the cycle of birth and death by reaching the ultimate abode. 1. We are not these bodies. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore you need not grieve for any living being. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 30. The very first step in self-realization is realizing one's identity as separate from the body. I am not this body, but I'm spirit soul, is an essential realization for anyone who wants to transcend death and enter into the spiritual world beyond. It is not simply a matter of saying, I am not this body, but of actually realizing it. This is not as simple as it may seem at first. Although we are not these bodies, but are pure consciousness, somehow or other, we have become encased within the bodily dress. If we actually want the happiness and independence that transcend death, we have to establish ourselves and remain in our constitutional position as pure consciousness. When we live in the bodily conception, our idea of happiness is like that of a man in delirium. Some philosophers claim that this delirious condition of bodily identification should be cured by abstaining from all action, because material activities have been a source of distress for us. They claim that we should actually stop all activity. Their perfection is a kind of Buddhistic nirvana in which no activities are performed. Buddha maintained that the body has come into existence due to the combination of material elements, and that if these material elements are somehow or other separated or dismantled, the cause of suffering will be removed. If the tax collector gives us too much difficulty because we happen to possess a large house, one simple solution is to destroy the house. But the Bhagavad Gita indicates that the material body is not all in all. Beyond this combination of material elements, there is spirit, and the symptom of that spirit is consciousness. Consciousness cannot be denied. A body without consciousness is a dead body. As soon as consciousness is removed from the body, the mouth will not speak, the eyes will not see, and the ears will not hear. A child can understand that. It's a fact that consciousness is absolutely necessary for the animation of the body. What is this consciousness? Just as heat and light are symptoms of fire, so consciousness is the symptom of the soul. The energy of the soul or self is produced in the shape of consciousness. Indeed, consciousness proves that the soul is present. This is the conclusion not only of the Bhagavad Gita, but of all Vedic literature. Both the impersonalistic followers of Sankaracharya and the Vaishnavas, following in the disciplic succession from Lord Sri Krishna, acknowledge the factual existence of the soul. But the Buddhist philosophers do not. The Buddhists contend that at a certain stage the combination of matter produces consciousness, but this argument is refuted by the fact that although we may have all the constituents of matter at our disposal, we cannot produce consciousness from them. All the material elements may be present in a dead man, but we cannot revive that man to consciousness. A man is not a machine. When a part of a machine breaks down, it can be replaced and the machine will work again. But when the body breaks down, the consciousness leaves the body. There is no possibility of our replacing the broken part and reviving the body. The soul is different from the body, and as long as the soul is there, the body is animate. But there is no possibility of making the body animate in the absence of the soul. Because we cannot perceive the soul with our gross senses, we deny that it exists. Actually, there are so many things we cannot see. We cannot see air, radio waves, or sound, nor can we perceive minute bacteria with our blunt senses. But this does not mean they are not there. With the aid of a microscope and other instruments, we can perceive many things previously unknown to those relying only on the imperfect senses. Just because the soul, which is atomic in size, has not been perceived yet with the blunt senses or instruments, we should not conclude that it is not there. We can, however, understand the presence of the soul by perceiving its symptoms and effects. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 14, Sri Krishna points out that all of our miseries are due to false identification with the body. Quote, O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Unquote. In the summertime, we may feel pleasure from contact with cold water, but in the winter, we may shun that very water because it is too cold. In either case, the water is the same, but we perceive it as pleasant or painful due to its contact with the body under different conditions. All feelings of distress and happiness are due to the body. Under certain conditions, the body and mind feels happiness or distress. Factually, we are hankering after happiness, for the soul's constitutional position is that of happiness. The soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Being, who is Satchidananda Vigraha, the embodiment of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Indeed, the very name Krishna, which is non-sectarian, means the greatest pleasure. Krish means the greatest, and Na means pleasure. Krishna is the epitome of pleasure, and being part and parcel of him, we hanker for pleasure. A drop of ocean water has all the properties of the ocean itself, and we, although minute particles of the Supreme Whole, have the same energetic properties as the Supreme. The atomic soul, although so small, is moving the entire body to act in so many wonderful ways. In the world, we see so many cities, highways, bridges, great buildings, monuments, and great civilizations. But who has done all this? It is all done by the minute spirit spark within the body. If such wonderful things can be performed by the minute spirit spark, we cannot begin to imagine what can be accomplished by the Supreme Spirit Whole. The natural hankering of the minute spirit spark is for the qualities of the whole: eternality, knowledge, and bliss. But these hankerings are being frustrated due to the material body. The information on how to attain the soul's desire is given in the Bhagavad Gita. At present, we are trying to attain eternity, knowledge, and bliss by means of an imperfect instrument. Actually, our progress towards these goals is being blocked by the material body. Therefore, we have to come to the realization of our existence beyond the body. Theoretical knowledge that we are not these bodies will not do. We have to keep ourselves always separate as masters of the body, not as servants. If we know how to drive a car well, it will give us good service, but if we do not know how, we will be in danger. The body is composed of senses, and the senses are always hungry after their objects. The eyes see a beautiful person and tell us, "Oh, there is a beautiful girl, a beautiful boy. Let's go see." The ears are telling us, "Oh, there is very nice music. Let's go hear it." The tongue is saying, "Oh, there is a very nice restaurant with palatable dishes. Let us go." In this way, the senses are dragging us from one place to another, and because of this, we are perplexed. Quote, "As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 67. It is imperative that we learn how to control the senses. The name Goswami is given to someone who has learned how to master the senses. Go means senses, and Swami means controller. So one who can control the senses is to be considered a Goswami. Krishna indicates that one who identifies with the illusory body cannot establish himself in his proper identity as spiritual soul. Bodily pleasure is flickering and intoxicating, and we cannot actually enjoy it because of its momentary nature. Actual pleasure is of the soul, not the body. We have to mold our lives in such a way that we will not be diverted by bodily pleasure. If somehow we are diverted, it is not possible for us to establish our consciousness in its true identity beyond the body. Quote, "In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verses 44 to 45. The word Veda means book of knowledge. There are many books of knowledge which vary according to the country, population, environment, etc. In India, the books of knowledge are referred to as the Vedas. In the West, they are called the Old Testament and New Testament. The Muslims accept the Quran. What is the purpose for all these books of knowledge? They are to train us to understand our position as pure soul. Their purpose is to restrict bodily activities by certain rules and regulations, and these rules and regulations are known as codes of morality. The Bible, for instance, has 10 commandments intended to regulate our lives. The body must be controlled in order for us to reach the highest perfection, and without regulative principles, it is not possible to perfect our lives. The regulative principles may differ from country to country or from scripture to scripture, but that doesn't matter, for they are made according to the time and circumstances and the mentality of the people. But the principle of regulated control is the same. Similarly, the government sets down certain regulations to be obeyed by its citizens. There is no possibility of making advancement in government or civilization without some regulations. In the second verse quoted above, Sri Krishna tells Arjuna that the regulative principles of the Vedas are primarily meant to control one's activities under the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. However, Krishna is advising Arjuna to establish himself in his pure constitutional position as spirit soul, beyond the dualities of material nature. As we have already pointed out, these dualities, such as heat and cold, pleasure and pain, arise due to the contact of the senses with their objects. In other words, they are born of identification with the body. Krishna indicates that those who are devoted to enjoyment and power are carried away by the words of the Vedas that promise heavenly enjoyment by sacrifice and regulated activity. Enjoyment is our birthright, for it is the characteristic of spirit soul. But when the spirit soul tries to enjoy materially, that is the mistake. Everyone is turning to material subjects for enjoyment and is compiling as much knowledge as possible. Someone is becoming a chemist, physicist, politician, artist, or whatever. Everyone knows something of everything or everything of something, and this is generally known as knowledge. But as soon as we leave the body, all of this knowledge is vanished. In a previous life, one may have been a great man of knowledge, but in this life, he has to start again by going to school and learning how to read and write from the beginning. Whatever knowledge was acquired in the previous life is forgotten. The situation is that we are actually seeking eternal knowledge, but this cannot be acquired by this material body. We are all seeking enjoyment through these bodies, but bodily enjoyment is not our actual enjoyment, it is artificial. We have to understand that if we want to continue in this artificial enjoyment, we will not be able to attain our position of eternal enjoyment. Identification with the body must be considered a diseased condition of the spirit soul. A diseased man cannot enjoy himself properly. A man with jaundice, for instance, will taste candy as bitter, but a healthy man can taste its sweetness. In either case, the candy is the same, but according to our condition, it tastes different. Unless we are cured of this diseased conception of bodily life, we cannot taste the sweetness of spiritual life. Indeed, it will taste bitter to us. At the same time, by increasing our enjoyment of material life, we are further complicating our disease condition. A typhoid patient cannot eat solid food, and if someone gives it to him to enjoy and he eats it, he is further complicating his malady and is endangering his life. If we really want freedom from the miseries of material existence, we must minimize our bodily demands and pleasures. Actually, material enjoyment is not enjoyment at all. Real enjoyment does not cease. In the Padma Purana, it is said, the yogis, those who are endeavoring to elevate themselves to the spiritual platform, are actually enjoying, but their enjoyment is endless. This is because their enjoyment is in relation to the supreme enjoyer, Sri Krishna. Bhagavan Sri Krishna is the real enjoyer, and in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, verse 29, he confirms this. Quote, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. End quote. Bhoja means enjoyment, and our enjoyment comes from understanding our position as the enjoyed. The real enjoyer is the Supreme Lord, and we are enjoyed by Him. An example of this relationship can be found in the material world between a husband and a wife. The husband is the enjoyer, Purusha, and the wife is the enjoyed, Prakriti. The word Prakriti means woman. Purusha or spirit is the subject, and Prakriti or nature is the object. The enjoyment, however, is participated in by both the husband and the wife. When actual enjoyment is there is no distinction that the husband is enjoying more or the wife is enjoying less. Although the male is the predominator and the female is the predominated, there is no division when it comes to enjoyment. On a larger scale, however, all living entities are Prakriti and are meant to be enjoyed by the Lord, the Supreme Purusha. God expanded into many, and we constitute those expansions. God is one without a second, but He willed to become many in order to enjoy. We have experienced that there is little or no enjoyment in sitting alone in a room talking to ourselves. However, if there are 5 people present, our enjoyment is enhanced, and if we can discuss Krishna before many people, the enjoyment is all the greater. Enjoyment means variety. God became many for His enjoyment, and thus our position is that of the enjoyed. That is our constitutional position and the purpose for our creation. Both enjoyer and enjoyed have consciousness, but the consciousness of the enjoyed is subordinate to the consciousness of the enjoyer. Although Krishna is the enjoyer and we are the enjoyed, the enjoyment can be participated in equally by everyone. Our enjoyment can be perfected when we participate in the enjoyment of God. There is no possibility of our enjoying separately on the bodily platform. Material enjoyment on the gross bodily platform is discouraged throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Quote, O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, verse 14. The gross material body is a result of the interaction of modes of material nature, and it is doomed to destruction. Quote, Only the material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is subject to destruction. Therefore fight, O descendant of Bharata. End quote. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, verse 18. Sri Krishna therefore encourages us to transcend the bodily conception of existence and attain to our actual spiritual life. Quote, When the embodied being is able to transcend these 3 modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy the nectar even in this life. End quote. Bhagavad Gita chapter 14, verse 20. To establish ourselves on the pure spiritual platform above the 3 modes, we must take up the method of Krishna consciousness. The gift of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the chanting of the names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, facilitates this process. This method is called Bhakti Yoga or Mantra Yoga, and it is employed by the highest transcendentalists. How the transcendentalists realize their identity beyond birth and death, beyond the material body, and transfer themselves from the material universe to the spiritual universes are the subjects of the following chapters. 2. Elevation at death. There are different kinds of transcendentalists who are called yogis, hatha yogis, jnana yogis, dhyana yogis, and bhakti yogis, and all of them are eligible to be transferred to the spiritual world. The word yoga means to link up, and the yoga systems are meant to enable us to link with the transcendental world. As mentioned in the previous chapter originally, We are all connected to the Supreme Lord, but now we have been affected by material contamination. The process is that we have to return to the spiritual world, and that process of linking up is called yoga. Another meaning of the word yoga is plus. At the present moment, we are minus God, or minus the Supreme. When we add Krishna or God to our lives, this human form of life becomes perfect. At the time of death, we have to finish that process of perfection. During our lifetime, we have to practice the method of approaching that perfection so that at the time of death, when we have to give up this material body, that perfection can be realized. Quote, "One who at the time of death fixes his life air between the eyebrows and by the strength of yoga with an undeviating mind engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead." End quote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 10. Just as a student studies a subject for 4 or 5 years and then takes his examination and receives a degree, similarly with the subject of life, if we practice during our lives for the examination at the time of death, and if we pass the examination, we are transferred to the spiritual world. Our whole life is examined at the time of death. Quote, "Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail." End quote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 6. There is a Bengali proverb that says that whatever one does for perfection will be tested at the time of his death. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verses 11 to 12, Krishna describes what one should do when giving up the body. For the dhyana yogi or the meditator, Krishna speaks the following verses. Quote, "Persons who are learned in Vedas, who utter Omkara, and who are great sages in the renowned order, enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now briefly explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. In the yoga system, this process is called pratyahara, which means just the opposite. Although during life the eyes are engaged in seeing worldly beauty, at death one has to retract the senses from their objects and see the beauty within. Similarly, the ears are accustomed to hearing so many sounds in the world, but at the moment of death one has to hear the transcendental Omkara from within. Quote, "After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred symbol Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets." End quote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 13. In this way, all the senses have to be stopped in their external activities and concentrated on the form of Vishnu Murti, the form of God. The mind is very turbulent, but it has to be fixed on the Lord in the heart. When the mind is fixed within the heart and the life air is transferred to the top of the head, one can attain perfection in yoga. At this point, the yogi determines where he is to go. In the material universe, there are innumerable planets, and beyond this universe, there is the spiritual universe. Yogis have information of these places from the Vedic literatures. Just as someone planning to go to America can get some idea what the country is like by reading books, one can also have knowledge of the spiritual planets by reading the Vedic literatures. The yogi knows all these descriptions, and he can transfer himself to any planet he likes without the help of spaceships. Space travel by mechanical means is not the accepted process for elevation to other planets. Perhaps with a great deal of time, effort, and money, a few men may be able to reach other planets by material means, spaceships, spacesuits, etc., but this is a very cumbersome and impractical method. In any case, it is not possible to go beyond the material universe by mechanical means. The generally accepted method for transferal to higher planets is the practice of the meditational yoga system or jnana yoga system. The bhakti yoga system, however, is not to be practiced for transferal to any material planet. Those who are servants of Krishna, the Supreme Lord, are not interested in any planets in this material world because they know that on whatever planet one enters in the material sky, the four principles of birth, old age, death, disease are all present. On higher planets, the duration of life may be longer than on this earth, but death is there nonetheless. By material universe, we refer to those planets where birth, old age, disease, and death reside, and by spiritual universe, we refer to those planets where there is no birth, old age, disease, or death. Those who are intelligent do not try to elevate themselves to any planet within the material universe. If one tries to enter higher planets by mechanical means, instant death is assured, for the body cannot stand the radical changes in atmosphere. But if one attempts to go to higher planets by means of the yoga system, he will acquire a suitable body for entrance. We can see this demonstrated on this earth, for we know it is not possible for us to live in the sea in a watery atmosphere, nor is it possible for aquatics to live on the land. As we understand that even on this planet one has to have a particular type of body to live in a particular place, so a particular type of body is required for other planets. On the higher planets, bodies live much longer than on Earth, because 6 months on Earth is equal to 1 day on the higher planets. Thus, the Vedas describe that those who live on the higher planets live for up to 10,000 Earth years. Yet despite such a long lifespan, death awaits everyone. Even if one lives for 20,000 or 50,000 or even 10 million years in the material world, the years are all counted, and death is there. How can we escape this subjugation? By death, this is the lesson of the Bhagavad Gita. Quote, "For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain." End quote. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 20. We are spirit soul, and as such we are eternal. Why then should we subject ourselves to birth and death? One who asks this question is to be considered intelligent. Those who are Krishna conscious are very intelligent because they are not interested in gaining entrance to any planet where there is death. They will reject the long duration of life in order to attain a body like God's. Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure. If we transfer ourselves from this body into the spiritual world, either to Krishna Loka, Krishna's planet, or any other spiritual planet, we will receive a similar Sakchat Ananda body. Thus, the aim of those who are in Krishna consciousness is different from the aim of those who are trying to promote themselves to higher planets within this material world. The self or soul of the individual is a minute spiritual spark The perfection of yoga lies in the transferal of the spiritual spark to the top of the head. Having attained this, the yogi can transfer himself to any planet in the material world according to his desire. If the yogi is curious to know what the moon is like, he can transfer himself there, or if he is interested in higher planets, he can transfer himself there, just as travelers go to New York, London, or other cities on the earth. Wherever one goes on earth, he finds the same visa and custom systems operating, and on all the material planets one can similarly see the principles of birth, old age, disease, and death operating. At the point of death, the yogi can pronounce Om, Omkara, the concise form of transcendental sound vibration. If the yogi can vibrate this sound and at the same time remember Krishna or Vishnu, he attains the highest goal. The purpose of yoga is to concentrate the mind on Vishnu. The impersonalists imagine some form of the Supreme Lord, but the personalists do not imagine this, they actually see. Whether one imagines him or actually sees him, one has to concentrate his mind on the personal form of Krishna. Quote, "For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to attain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional services." End quote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 14. Those who are satisfied with temporary life, temporary pleasure, and temporary facilities are not intelligent, at least not according to the Bhagavad Gita. According to the Gita, one whose brain substance is very meager is interested in temporary things. We are eternal, so why should we be interested in temporary things? No one wants a non-permanent situation. If we are living in an apartment and the landlord asks us to vacate, we are sorry. But we are not sorry if we move into a better apartment. Because we are permanent, it is our nature to want a permanent residence. We don't wish to die, because in actuality, we are permanent. Nor do we want to grow old or be diseased, because these are all external or non-permanent states. Although we are not meant to suffer from fever, sometimes fever comes, and we have to take precautions and remedies to get well again. The fourfold mysteries are like a fever, and they are all due to the material body. If somehow we can get out of the material body, we can escape the miseries that are integral to it. For the impersonalists to get out of this temporary body, Krishna here advises that they vibrate the symbol Om. In this way, they can be assured of transmigration to the spiritual world. However, although they may enter the spiritual world, they cannot enter any of the planets there. They remain outside in the Brahma Jyoti. The Brahma Jyoti may be compared to the sunshine. The spiritual planets may be compared to the sun itself. In the spiritual sky, the impersonalists remain in the effulgence of the Supreme Lord, the Brahma Jyoti. The impersonalists are placed in the Brahma Jyoti as spiritual sparks, and in this way, the Brahma Jyoti is filled with spiritual sparks. This is what is meant by merging into the spiritual existence. It should not be considered that one merges into the Brahma Jyoti in the sense of becoming one with it. The individuality of the spiritual spark is retained, but because the impersonalist does not want to take a personal form, he remains as a spiritual spark in that effulgence. Just as the sunshine is composed of so many atomic particles, so the Brahma Jyoti is composed of so many spiritual sparks. However, as living entities, we want enjoyment. Being in itself is not enough. We want bliss as well as being. In his entirety, the living entity is composed of three qualities: eternality, knowledge, and bliss. Those who enter impersonally into the Brahma Jyoti can remain there for some time in full knowledge that they are now merged homogeneously with Brahman, but they cannot have that eternal bliss because that part is wanting. One may remain alone in a room for some time and may enjoy himself by reading a book or engaging in some thought, but it is not possible to remain in that room for years and years at a time, and certainly not for all eternity. Therefore, for one who merges impersonally into the existence of the Supreme, there is every chance of falling down again into the material world in order to acquire some association. This is the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam. Astronauts may travel thousands and thousands of miles, but if they do not find rest on some planet, they have to return to Earth. In any case, rest is required. In the impersonal form, rest is uncertain. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam says that even after so much endeavor, if the impersonalist enters the spiritual world and acquires an impersonal form, he returns again to the material world because of neglecting to serve the Supreme Lord in love and devotion. As long as we are here on earth, we must learn to practice to love and serve Krishna, the Supreme Lord. If we learn this, we can enter those spiritual planets. The impersonalist's position in the spiritual world is non-permanent. For out of loneliness he will attempt to acquire some association. Because he does not associate personally with the Supreme Lord, he has to return to the material world and associate with conditioned living entities here. It is of utmost importance, therefore, that we know the nature of our constitutional position. We want eternity, complete knowledge, and also pleasure. When we are left alone for a long time in the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, we cannot have pleasure, and therefore we accept the pleasure given by the material world. But in Krishna consciousness, real pleasure is enjoyed. In the material world, it is generally accepted that the highest pleasure is sex. This is a perverted reflection of the sex pleasure in the spiritual world. But we should not think that the pleasure there is like sex pleasure in the material world. No, it is different. But unless sex is there in the spiritual world, it cannot be reflected here. Here it is simply a perverted reflection, but the actual life is there in Krishna, who is full of all pleasure. Therefore, the best process is to train ourselves now, so that at the time of death, we may transfer ourselves to the spiritual universe, to Krishna Loka, and there enjoy the association of Krishna. In the Brahma Samhita, Sri Krishna and his abode are described in chapter 5, verse 29. Quote, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending cows, yielding all desires and abodes, built with spiritual gems and surrounded by millions of purpose trees. He is always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. End quote. This is a description of Krishna Loka. The houses are made of what is called touchstone. Whatever touchstone touches immediately turns into gold. The trees are wish-fulfilling trees or desire trees, for one can receive from them whatever he wishes. In this world, we get mangoes from mango trees and apples from apple trees, but there, from any tree, one can get whatever he desires. Similarly, the cows are called Surabhi, and they yield an endless supply of milk. These descriptions of the spiritual planets are found in Vedic scriptures. In this material world, we have become acclimatized to birth, death, old age, and disease. Material scientists have discovered many facilities for sense enjoyment and destruction, but they have discovered no solution to the problems of birth, death, old age, and disease. They cannot make any machine that will check birth, death, old age, or disease. We can manufacture something that will accelerate death, but nothing that will stop death. Those who are intelligent, however, are concerned not with these four miseries of material life, but with elevation to the spiritual planets. One who is continuously in trance does not divert his attention to anything else. His mind is always filled with the thought of Krishna without deviation. In India, I lived in Vrindavana, and now I am in America. But this does not mean that I am not of Vrindavana, because if I think of Krishna always, then I'm always in Vrindavana, regardless of material location. Krishna consciousness means that one always lives with Krishna on his spiritual planet Goloka, Vrindavana, and that one is simply waiting to give up this material body. For one who is continuously remembering Krishna, the Lord becomes Sulabha, easily purchased. Krishna himself says that he is easily purchased by his bhakti yoga process. Then why should we take to any other process? We can chant Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, 24 hours daily. There are no rules and regulations. One can chant in the street, in the subway, or at his home or office. There is no tax and no expense, so why not take to it? 3. Liberation from material planets. The jnanis and yogis are generally impersonalists, and although they attain the temporary form of liberation by merging into the personal effulgence, the spiritual sky, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, their knowledge is not considered pure. By penances, austerities, and meditations, they can raise up to the platform of the Supreme Absolute, but as has been explained, they fall down to the material world because they have not taken Krishna's personal features seriously. Unless one worships the lotus feet of Krishna, he has to descend to the material platform. The ideal location should be, I am your eternal servitor. Please let me somehow engage in your service. Krishna is called Ajita, unconquerable, for no one can conquer God. But according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, one with this attitude easily conquers the Supreme. Srimad Bhagavatam also recommends that we give up the futile attempt to measure the Supreme. We cannot even measure the limitations of space. What to think of the Supreme? It is not possible to measure the length and breadth of Krishna by one's minuscule knowledge, and one who arrives at this conclusion is considered intelligent by the Vedic literature. One should come to understand submissively that he is a very insignificant segment of the universe. Abandoning the endeavor to understand the Supreme by our limited knowledge or mental speculation, we should become submissive and hear of the Supreme from the lips of a realized soul, or from such authoritative sources as the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is hearing about God from the lips of Sri Krishna himself. In this way, Arjuna set the criterion for understanding the Supreme by submissive hearing. It is our position to hear the Bhagavad Gita from the lips of Arjuna or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master. After hearing, it is necessary to practice this acquired knowledge in daily life. My dear Lord, you are unconquerable, the devotee prays, but by this process, by hearing, you are conquered. God is unconquerable, but he is conquered by the devotee who abandons mental speculation and listens to authoritative sources. According to the Brahma Samhita, there are two ways of acquiring knowledge: the ascending process and the descending process. By the ascending process, one is elevated by knowledge he himself acquires. In this way, one thinks, I don't care for any authorities or books. I'll learn about God on my own. I'll meditate and philosophize, and in this way I'll understand God. The other process, the descending process, involves receiving knowledge from higher authorities. The Brahma Samhita states that if one takes to the ascending process and travels at the speed of the mind and wind for millions of years, he will still end up not knowing God. For him, the subject matter will remain elusive and inconceivable, but the simple process for understanding that subject matter is given in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says to meditate on him without deviating from the path of devotional service in submission. For one who worships him in this way, I become easily available. This is the process. If one works for Krishna 24 hours a day, Krishna cannot forget him. By becoming submissive, he can attract the attention of God. As my Guru Maharaja used to say, don't try to see God. Is God to come and stand before us like a servant just because we want to see him? That is not the submissive way. We have to oblige him by our love and service. The proper process for approaching Krishna was given to humanity by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Rupa Goswami, his first disciple, appreciated it. Rupa Goswami was a minister in the Mohammedan government, but he left the government to become a disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he first went to see the Lord, Rupa Goswami approached him with the following verse, quote, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who is more magnificent than any other avatara, even Krishna himself, because he is bestowing freely what no one else has ever given, pure love of Krishna, end quote. Krishna gives himself to one who attains pure love for him. So Rupa Goswami called Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the most magnificent personality because he was offering the most precious thing of all very cheaply, Krishna. We are all hankering after Krishna because he is the most attractive, the most beautiful, the most opulent, the most powerful, and the most learned. Krishna is the reservoir of all of this, so we need only turn our attention towards him, and we will get everything, whatever we want, whatever is in our heart's desire, will be fulfilled by this process of Krishna consciousness. As stated before, for one who dies in Krishna consciousness, entrance into Krishna Loka, the supreme abode where Krishna resides, is guaranteed. At this point, one may ask what the advantage is in going to that planet, and Krishna himself answers, quote, after attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries because they have attained the highest perfection, end quote. Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 verse 15. This material world is certified by Sri Krishna, the Creator, as full of miseries. How then can we make it comfortable? Is it possible to make this world comfortable by the so-called advancements of science? No, this is not possible. As a result, We do not even wish to know what these miseries are. The miseries, as stated before, are birth, old age, disease, and death, and because we cannot make a solution to them, we try to set them aside. Science has no power to solve these mysteries, which are always giving us trouble. Instead, the scientists divert their attention to the making of spaceships or atomic bombs. The solution to these problems is given in the Bhagavad Gita. One who attains to Krishna's platform does not have to return to this world of birth and death. We should try to understand that this place is full of miseries. It takes a certain amount of developed consciousness to understand this. Cats and dogs and hogs cannot understand that they are suffering. Man is called a rational animal, but his rationality is being used to further his animalistic propensities instead of to find out how to get liberation from this miserable condition. Here Krishna explicitly states that one who comes to him will never be reborn to suffer miseries again. Those great souls who come to him have attained the highest perfection of life, which alleviates the living entity from the suffering of conditioned existence. One of the differences between Krishna and an ordinary being is that an ordinary entity can be in only one place at one time, but Krishna can be everywhere in the universe and yet also in his own abode simultaneously. Krishna's abode in the transcendental kingdom is called Goloka Vrindavana. The Vrindavana in India is that same Vrindavana descended to this earth. When Krishna descends by his own internal potency, his abode also descends. In other words, when Krishna descends to this earth, he manifests himself in that particular land. Despite this, Krishna's abode remains eternally in the transcendental sphere, in the Vaikunthas. In this verse, Krishna proclaims that one who comes to his abode in the Vaikunthas never has to take birth again in the material world. Such a person is called a Mahatma. The word Mahatma is generally heard in the West in connection with Mahatma Gandhi, but we should understand that Mahatma is not the title of a politician. Rather, Mahatma refers to the first-class Krishna-conscious man who is eligible to enter into the abode of Krishna. The Mahatma's perfection is this: to utilize the human form of life and the resources of nature to extricate himself from the cycle of birth and death. An intelligent person thinks, I do not want miseries, but they are inflicted upon me by force. Why? As stated before, we are always in a miserable condition due to disturbances arising from our mind and body, nature, or other living entities. There is always some kind of misery being inflicted upon us. This material world is meant for misery. Unless the misery is there, we cannot come to Krishna consciousness. Miseries actually help elevate us to Krishna consciousness. An intelligent man questions why these miseries are inflicted on him by force. However, modern civilization's attitude is, let me cover my suffering with some intoxication, that's all. But as soon as the intoxication is over, the miseries return. It is not possible to make a solution to the miseries of life by artificial intoxication. The solution is Krishna consciousness. One may point out that although the devotees of Krishna are trying to enter Krishna's planet, everyone else is interested in going to the moon. Isn't going to the moon also perfection? The tendency to travel to other planets is always present in the living entity. One name for the living entity is Sarvagata, which means one who wants to travel everywhere. Travel is part of the nature of the living entity. The desire to go to the moon is not a new thing. The yogis are also interested in entering the higher planets, but in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna points out that this will not be of any help. Chapter 8, verse 16. Quote, from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Unquote. The universe is divided into higher, middle, and lower planetary systems. The Earth is considered to be a member of the middle planetary system. Krishna points out that even if one enters into the highest planet of all, called Brahmaloka, there is still repetition of birth and death. Other planets in the universe are full of living entities. We should not think that here on Earth there are living entities, but all the other planets are vacant. From experience, we can see that no place on Earth is vacant without living entities. If we dig deep down into the earth, we find worms. If we go deep into the water, we find aquatics. If we go into the sky, we find so many birds. How is it possible to conclude that other planets have no living entities? But Krishna points out that even if we enter into those planets where great demigods reside, we will still be subjected to death. Here Krishna repeats that upon reaching his planet, one need not take birth again. We should be very serious about attaining our eternal life, full of bliss and knowledge. We have forgotten that this is actually our aim of life, our real self-interest. Why have we forgotten? We have simply been entrapped by the material glitter, by skyscrapers, big factories, politics. Although we know that however big we build skyscrapers, we will not be able to live here forever. We should not spoil our energy in building mighty industries and cities to further entrap ourselves in material nature. Rather, we should use our energy to develop Krishna consciousness so that after leaving this body, we can enter Krishna's spiritual planet. Krishna consciousness is not a religious formula or some spiritual recreation. It is the most important thing in our lives. 4. The sky beyond the universe. If even those on the higher planets in this universe are subject to birth and death, why do great yogis strive for elevation to them? Although they may have many mystic powers, these yogis still have the tendency to enjoy the facilities of material life. On the higher planets, it is possible to live for incredibly long lifetimes. The time calculation on these planets is indicated by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 17. Quote, by human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. Unquote. One yuga covers 4,320,000 years. This number multiplied by 1,000 is calculated to be the 12 hours of Brahma's daytime on the planet Brahmaloka. Similarly, another 12-hour period covers the night. 30 such days equal a month, 12 months equal a year, and Brahma lives for 100 such years. Life on such a planet is indeed long, yet even after trillions of years, the inhabitants of Brahmaloka have to face death. Unless we go to the spiritual planets, there is no escape from death. Quote, at the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest from the unmanifest state, and thereafter, when the night falls, they are merged into the unmanifest again. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 18. At the end of the day of Brahma, all the lower planetary systems are covered with water, and the beings on them are annihilated. After this devastation, and after the night of Brahma passes, in the morning when Brahma arises, there is again creation, and all these creations come forth. Thus, Subjection to creation and destruction is the nature of the material world. Quote, again and again, when Brahma days arrives, all living entities can come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, O Partha, they are helplessly annihilated. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 19. Although the living entities do not like devastation, that devastation will come and overflood the planets until all the living beings on the planet stay merged in water throughout the night of Brahma. But as day comes, the water gradually disappears. Quote, yet there is another unmanifest nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. End quote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 20. We cannot calculate the extent of the material universe, but we have Vedic information that there are millions of universes within the entire creation, and that beyond these material universes there is another sky which is spiritual. There, all the planets are eternal, and the lives of all the beings on them are eternal. In this verse, the word bhava means nature, and here another nature is indicated. In this world also, we have experience of two natures. The living entity is spirit, and as long as he is within matter, matter is moving, and as soon as the living entity, the spiritual spark, is out of the body does not move. The spiritual nature is called Krishna's superior nature, and the material is called the inferior. Beyond this material nature, there is a superior nature which is totally spiritual. It is not possible to understand this by experimental knowledge. We can see millions and millions of stars through a telescope, but we cannot approach them. We have to understand our incapabilities. If by experimental knowledge we cannot understand the material universe, what is the possibility of understanding God and His kingdom by these means? It is not possible. We have to understand by hearing the Bhagavad Gita. We cannot understand who our Father is by experimental knowledge. We have to hear the words of our mother and believe her. If we do not believe her, there is no way of knowing. Similarly, if we just stick to the Krishna conscious method, all information about Krishna and his kingdom will be revealed. We can see that the material universe is manifested through the earth, sun, stars, and planets, and beyond this universe is another nature, an eternal nature. This material nature has a beginning and an end, but that spiritual nature is eternal. It has neither beginning nor end. How is this possible? A cloud may pass over the sky and appear to cover a great portion of it, but actually the cloud is only a small speck covering an insignificant part of the whole sky. Because we are so small, if only a few hundred miles are covered by the cloud, to us it appears that the whole sky is covered. Similarly, this whole material universe is like a small, insignificant cloud in the vast spiritual sky. This material universe is encased by the Mahat Tattva matter. As a cloud has a beginning and an end, this material nature also has a beginning and an end. When the cloud disappears and the sky clears, we see everything as it is. Similarly, the body is like a cloud passing over the spirit soul. It stays for some time, gives some byproducts, dwindles, and then vanishes. Any kind of material phenomenon that we observe is subject to the 6 transformations of material nature. It comes into being, grows, stays for a while, produces some byproducts, dwindles, and then vanishes. Krishna indicates that beyond this changing cloud-like nature, there is a spiritual nature which is eternal. When this material nature is annihilated, that nature will remain. In the Vedic literatures, there is a good deal of information about the material and spiritual sky. In the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there are descriptions of the spiritual sky and its inhabitants. It is even said that there are spiritual airplanes in the spiritual sky, and that the liberated entities there travel about on these planes like lightning. Everything that we find here can also be found there in reality. Srimad Bhagavatam states that here in the material sky, everything is an imitation or shadow of that which exists in the spiritual sky. As in a cinema, we simply see a facsimile of the real thing, so this material world is but a combination of matter modeled after the reality, just as a mannequin of a girl in a store window is modeled after a girl. Every sane man knows that the mannequin is an imitation. Sridhara Swami says that it is because the spiritual world is real that this material world, which is an imitation, appears to be real. We must understand the meaning of reality. Reality means existence which cannot be vanquished. Reality means eternity. Quote, "Those who are seers of truth have concluded that of the non-existent there is no endurance, and of the existence there is no cessation. This seers have concluded by studying the nature of both." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 16. Real pleasure is Krishna, whereas material pleasure, which is temporary, is not actual. Those who can see things as they are do not take part in shadow pleasure. The real aim of human life is to attain to the spiritual sky, but as Srimad Bhagavatam points out, most people do not know about that. Human life is meant to understand reality and to be transferred into it. All Vedic literature instructs us not to remain in this darkness. The nature of this material world is darkness, but the spiritual world is full of light and yet is not illumined by fire or electricity. Krishna states this in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 6, quote, "That abode of mine is not illuminated by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world." Unquote. The spiritual world is called unmanifested because one cannot perceive it with material senses. Quote, "That which the Vedantists describe as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns, that is my supreme abode." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 21. A great journey is indicated in this verse. We have to be able to penetrate outer space, traverse the material universe, penetrate its coverings, and enter the spiritual sky. This is the supreme journey. There is no question of going a few thousand miles away from this planet and then returning. This sort of journey is not very heroic. We have to penetrate the whole material universe and enter the spiritual sky. This we cannot do by spaceships, but by Krishna consciousness. One who is absorbed in Krishna consciousness and who at the time of death thinks of Krishna is at once transferred there. If we at all want to go to that spiritual sky and attain real eternal blissful life, full of knowledge, we have to begin now to cultivate our Satchitananda body. It is said that Krishna has a Satchitananda body, and we also have a similar body of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. But ours is very small and is covered by the dress of this material body. If somehow or other we are able to give up this false dress, we can reach that spiritual kingdom. And once we can attain to that spiritual world, we will never have to come back. Everyone then should try to go to Krishna's supreme abode. Krishna himself comes to call us, and he gives us literatures as guidebooks and sends his bona fide representatives to teach us. We should take advantage of this facility given to human beings. For one who reaches that supreme abode, penances, austerities, yoga meditations, and so on are no longer required. And for one who does not reach it, all penances and austerities are useless and a waste of time. The human form of life is an opportunity to get this boon, and it is the duty of state, parents, teachers, and guardians to elevate those who have acquired this human form of life to this perfection. Simply eating, sleeping, mating, and quarreling like cats and dogs is not civilization. We should properly utilize this human form of life and take advantage of this knowledge to prepare ourselves in Krishna consciousness, so that 24 hours a day we will be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and a debt at once transferred to that spiritual sky. Quote, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotion. Although he is present in his abode, he is all-pervading, and everything is situated within him." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 22. If we are at all interested in reaching that supreme abode, the process as indicated here is bhakti. Bhakti meaning devotional service, submission to the Supreme Lord. The root of the word bhakti is bhaj, which means service. The definition of bhakti is given in the Narada Pancharatra. Quote, "Bhakti means engaging all one's senses in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of the senses. The result is that one is freed from all material designations and one's senses are purified." Unquote. If one is determined to get out of all the designations that are attached to the pure spirit soul, and which arise due to the body and are always changed when the body is changed, one can attain bhakti. To practice bhakti, one must realize that he is pure spirit and not matter at all. Our real identity is not this body, which is simply a covering of the spirit. Our real identity is servant of Krishna. When one is situated in his real identity and is rendering service to Krishna, he is a bhakta. When our senses are free from material designations, we will utilize them in the service of the Master of the senses, Krishna. As Rupa Goswami points out, we have to serve Krishna favorably. Generally, we want to serve God for some material purpose or gain. Of course, one who goes to God for material gain is better than one who never goes, but we should be free from desire for material benefit. Our aim should be to understand Krishna. Of course, Krishna is unlimited, and so it is not possible to understand him fully. But we have to accept that we can understand. Since we have to serve Krishna favorably for his pleasure, we need to understand what will please him. How can we know this? From books like the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is specifically presented for our understanding, and when we receive the right interpretation from the right person, we can know what will please Krishna. Then we should serve him favorably. Krishna consciousness is a great science with immense literatures, and we should utilize them for the attainment of bhakti. In the spiritual sky, the Supreme Lord is present as the Supreme Person. There are innumerable self-luminous planets there, and in each one, an expansion of Krishna resides. They are four-armed and have innumerable names. They are all persons. They are not impersonal. These Purushas or persons can be approached by bhakti, not by challenge, philosophical speculation, or mental concoctions, nor by physical exercises, but by devotion within the deviation of fruitive activity. What is the Supreme Person like? Every living entity and everything is within him, and yet he is without, all-pervading. How is that? He is just like the sun, which is situated in one place and yet is present all over by its rays. Although God is situated in his supreme abode, his energies are distributed everywhere, nor is he different from his energies inasmuch as the sun and the sunshine are non-different. Since Krishna and his energies are non-different, we can see Krishna everywhere if we are advanced in devotional service. Quote, I worship the original personality of Godhead, Govinda, whom the pure devotees, whose eyes are smeared with the ointment of love of Godhead, always see within their hearts. Unquote. Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, verse 38. Those who are filled with love of God see God constantly before them. It is not that we saw God last night and he is no longer present. No, for one who is Krishna conscious, Krishna is always present and can be perceived constantly. We simply have to develop the eyes to see him. Due to our material bondage, the covering of the material senses, we cannot understand what is spiritual, but this ignorance can be removed by the process of chanting Hare Krishna. How is this? A sleeping man may be awakened by sound vibration. Although a sleeping man cannot see, feel, smell, or taste, the sense of hearing is so prominent that he can be awakened by sound. Similarly, the spirit soul, although now overpowered by the sleep of material contact, can be revived by the transcendental sound vibration of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna is simply an address to the Supreme Lord and his energy. Hare means the Lord's energy, and Krishna is a name of the Supreme Lord. So when we chant Hare Krishna, we are saying, O energy of the Lord, O Lord, please accept me as your servant. We do not pray for anything else. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself prayed, quote, O son of Maharaja Nanda, I am your eternal servitor. And although I am so, somehow or other, I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please, therefore, pick me up from this ocean of death and fix me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Unquote. Siksastaka, chapter 5. The only hope for a man fallen into the middle of the ocean is that someone will come and pick him up. If someone comes and lifts him but a few feet out of the water, he is immediately relieved. Similarly, if we are lifted from the ocean of birth and death by the process of Krishna consciousness, we are immediately relieved. Although we cannot perceive the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord, his name, forms, qualities, and activities, if we establish ourselves in Krishna consciousness, gradually God will reveal himself before us. We cannot see God by our own endeavor, but if we qualify ourselves, God will reveal himself and then we will see. No one can order God to come before him and dance, but we can work in such a way that Krishna will be pleased to reveal himself to us. Krishna gives us information about himself in the Bhagavad Gita. and there is no question of doubting it. We just have to feel it to understand it. There is no preliminary qualification necessary for understanding the Bhagavad Gita because it is spoken from the absolute platform. The simple process of chanting the names of Krishna will reveal what one is, what God is, what the material and spiritual universes are, why we are conditioned, how we can get out of that conditioning. Everything will be revealed step by step. Actually, the process of belief and revelation is not foreign to us. Every day we place our faith in something that we have confidence will be revealed later. We may purchase a ticket to go to India, and on the basis of the ticket, we have faith that we will be transported there. Why should we pay money for a ticket? We do not just give the money to anyone. The company is authorized and the airline is authorized, so faith is created. Without faith, we cannot take one step forward in the ordinary course of our life. Faith we must have, but it must be faith in that which is authorized. It is not that we have blind faith, but that we accept something that is recognized. The Bhagavad Gita is recognized and accepted as scripture by all classes of men in India, and as far as outside India is concerned, many scholars, theologians, and philosophers accept the Bhagavad Gita as a great authoritative work. There is no question that the Bhagavad Gita is authoritative. Even Professor Albert Einstein, such a great scientist, read the Bhagavad Gita regularly. From the Bhagavad Gita, we have to accept that there is a spiritual universe which is the kingdom of God. If somehow we were transported to a country where we were informed that we would no longer have to undergo birth, old age, disease, and death, would we not be happy? If we heard of such a place, surely we would try as hard as possible to get there. No one wants to grow old. No one wants to die. Indeed, a place free of such sufferings would be our heart's desire. Why do we want this? Because we have the right, the prerogative to want it. We are eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, but having been covered by this material entanglement, we have forgotten ourselves. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita gives us the advantage of being able to revive our original status. The Sankhya-rites and Buddhists claim that the world beyond is void, but the Bhagavad Gita does not disappoint us like this. The philosophy of voidness has simply created atheists. We are spiritual beings and we want enjoyment, but as soon as we think our future is void, we will become inclined to enjoy this material life. In this way, the impersonalists discuss the philosophy of voidism while trying as much as possible to enjoy this material life. One may enjoy speculation in this way, but there is no spiritual benefit. Quote, one who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional services unto me. End quote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 54. He who has progressed in devotional life and who is relishing service to Krishna will automatically become detached from material enjoyment. The symptom of one absorbed in bhakti is that he is fully satisfied with Krishna. 5. Associating with Krishna. If one gets something superior, he naturally gives up all inferior things. We want enjoyment, but impersonalism and voidism have created such an atmosphere that we have become addicted to material enjoyment. There must be enjoyment in connection with the Supreme Person, whom we can see face to face. In the spiritual sky, we are able to speak personally with God, play with Him, eat with Him, etc. All of this can be attained by bhakti, transcendental loving service to the Lord. However, this service must be without adulteration. That is to say, we must love God without expecting material remuneration. Loving God to become one with Him is also a form of adulteration. One of the major differences between the spiritual sky and the material sky is that in the spiritual sky, the leader of the spiritual planets have no rival. In all cases, the predominating personality in the spiritual planets is a planetary expansion of Sri Krishna. The Supreme Lord and His multifarious manifestations preside over all the Vaikuntha planets. On earth, there is rivalry for the position of president or prime minister, but in the spiritual sky, everyone acknowledges the Supreme Personality of Godhood to be supreme. Those who do not acknowledge Him and attempt to become His rivals are placed into the material universe, which is just like a prison house. In every city there is a person which forms a very insignificant part of the whole city. Similarly, within the spiritual sky is a prison for the conditioned souls, and that prison is the material universe. It forms an insignificant part of the spiritual sky, but it is not outside the spiritual sky, just as a prison is not outside the city. The inhabitants of the Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky are all liberated souls. In Srimad Bhagavatam, we are informed that their bodily features are exactly like God's. On these planets, God is manifested with 4 arms. Like the Supreme Lord, the inhabitants of these planets also have 4 arms, and it is said that one cannot distinguish between them and the Supreme Person. In the spiritual world, there are 5 kinds of liberation. Sayujya Mukti is a form of liberation in which one merges into the impersonal existence of the Supreme Lord, called Brahman. Another form of liberation is Sarupya Mukti, by which one receives features exactly like God's. Another is Salokya Mukti, by which one can live on the same planet as God. By Sarsti Mukti, one can have opulences similar to the Supreme Lord's. And Samipya Mukti enables one to remain always with God as one of His associates, just like Arjuna, who is always with Krishna as his friend. One can have any of these 5 forms of liberation, but of the 5, merging with the impersonal aspect. Sayujya Mukti is not accepted by Vaishnavas or devotees. A Vaishnava wishes to worship God as He is and retain his separate individuality to serve Him, whereas the impersonal Mayavadi philosopher wishes to lose his individuality and merge into the existence of the Supreme. This merging is recommended neither by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita nor by the disciplic succession of Vaishnava philosophers. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wrote on this subject in his Siksastaka 4. Quote, O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service in my life, birth, and after birth. Unquote. Here, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu referred to birth after birth, When there is birth after birth, there is no liberation. In liberation, one either attains to the spiritual planets or merges into the existence of the Supreme. In either case, there is no question of rebirth in the material world. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't care whether he is liberated or not. His only concern is to be engaged in Krishna consciousness to serve the Supreme Lord. The devotee doesn't care where he is, nor does he care whether he is born into the animal society, human society, demigod society, or whatever. He only prays to God that he not forget him and that he always be able to engage in his transcendental service. This kind of prayers is a symptom of pure devotion. Of course, wherever he is, a devotee remains in the spiritual kingdom even while in this material body, but he does not demand anything from God for his own personal elevation or comfort. Sri Krishna indicates that while he can be easily reached by one who is devoted to him, there is an element of risk involved for the yogis who practice other methods of yoga. For them, he has given directions in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 23, regarding the proper time to leave the gross body. Quote, "O best of Bharatas, I shall now explain to you the different times at which passing away from this world one does or does not come back." Unquote. Here, Krishna indicates that if one is able to leave his body at a particular time, he can become liberated, never to return to the material world. On the other hand, he indicates that if one dies at another time, he has to return. There is an element of chance, but there is no question of chance for a devotee always in Krishna consciousness, for he is guaranteed entrance into the abode of Krishna by dint of his devotion to the Lord. Quote, "Those who know the Supreme Brahman attain that Supreme by passing away from this world during the influence of the fiery God, in the light at an auspicious moment of the day, during the fortnight of the waxing moon, or during the 6 months when the sun travels in the north." Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 verse 24. The sun spends 6 months in a northern orbit and 6 months in a southern orbit. In Srimad Bhagavatam, we have information that as the planets are moving, so also is the sun moving. If one who knows Brahman dies when the sun is in its northern course, he attains liberation. Quote, "The mystic who passes away from this world during the smoke, the night, the fortnight of the waning moon, or the 6 months when the sun passes to the south, reaches the moon planet, but again comes back. According to Vedic opinion, there are 2 ways of passing from this world, one in light and one in darkness. When one passes in light, he does not come back, but when one passes in darkness, he returns." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 verses 25 and 26. This is all by chance. We do not know when we are going to die, for we may die accidentally at any time. But for one who is a bhakti yogi, who is established in Krishna consciousness, there is no question of chance. He is always sure. Quote, "The devotees know these 2 paths, O Arjuna, and are thus never bewildered. Therefore be always fixed in devotion." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 verse 27. It has always been ascertained that at the time of death, one who thinks of Krishna is immediately transferred to the abode of Krishna. Quote, "And whoever at the time of death quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. He who meditates on me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engages in remembering me, undeviated from the path. He, O Partha, is sure to reach me. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verses 5 and chapter 8, verses 8. Such meditation on Krishna may seem very difficult, but it is not. If one practices Krishna consciousness by chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, he will quickly be helped. Krishna and his name are non-different, and Krishna and his transcendental abode are non-different. By sound vibration we can associate with Krishna. If, for instance, we chant Hare Krishna on the street, we will see that Krishna is going with us. Just as when we look up and see the moon overhead, we perceive that it is also going with us. If Krishna's inferior energy may appear to go with us, is it not possible for Krishna himself to be with us when we are chanting his name? He will keep us company, but we have to qualify to be in his company. If, however, we are always merged in the thought of Krishna, we should rest assured that Krishna is always with us. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prays, quote, "O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies, and there are no hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by chanting your holy names. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them." Unquote. Siksastaka 2. Merely by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we can have all the advantages of personal association with Krishna. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is considered not only a realized soul, but an incarnation of Krishna himself, has pointed out that in this age of Kali, although people have no real facilities for self-realization, Krishna is so kind that he has descended in the form of transcendental sound, his holy names. Chanting these names is the Yuga Dharma, or way of realization for this age. No special qualifications is needed for this method. We need not even know Sanskrit. The Hare Krishna mantra is so potent that anyone can immediately begin chanting it without any knowledge of Sanskrit whatsoever. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service he attains all these, and at the end he reaches the supreme abode. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 verse 28. Here Krishna says that the purpose of all the Vedic instructions is to achieve the ultimate goal of life, to go back to Godhead. All scriptures from all countries aim at this goal. This has also been the message of all religious reformers. In the West, for example, Lord Jesus Christ spread the same message. So did Lord Buddha and Muhammad. None of them advised us to try to make our permanent settlement here in this material world. There may be small differences according to country, time, and circumstance, and according to scriptural injunction, but the main principle that we are meant not for this material world, but for the spiritual world is accepted by all genuine transcendentalists. All indications for the satisfaction of our souls innermost desires point to those words of Krishna beyond birth and death. The author. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda appeared in this world in 1896 in Calcutta, India. He first met his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Goswami in Calcutta in 1922. Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, a prominent religious scholar and the founder of 64 Gaudiya Matas or Vedic institutes, liked this educated young man and convinced him to dedicate his life to teaching Vedic knowledge. Srila Prabhupada became his student and in 1933 his formally initiated disciple. At their first meeting in 1922, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati requested Srila Prabhupada to broadcast Vedic knowledge in English. In the years that followed, Srila Prabhupada wrote a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, assisted in the Gaudiya Mata in its work, and in 1944 started Back to Godhead, an English fortnightly magazine. Single-handedly, Srila Prabhupada edited it, typed the manuscripts, checked the gallery proofs, and even distributed the individual copies. The magazine is now being continued by his followers. In 1950, Srila Prabhupada retired from married life, adopting the Vanaprastha or retired order to devote more time to his studies and writing. He traveled to the holy city of Vrindavana, where he lived in humble circumstances in the historic temple of Radha Damodara. There he engaged for several years in deep study and writing. He accepted the renounced order of life or the sannyasin life in 1959. At Radha Damodara, Srila Prabhupada began work on his life's masterpiece, a multi-volume commentated translation of the 18,000-verse Srimad Bhagavatam. He also wrote Easy Journeys to Other Planets. After publishing 3 volumes of the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada came to the United States in September 1965 to fulfill the mission of his spiritual master. Subsequently, His Divine Grace wrote more than 50 volumes of authoritative, commentated translations and summary studies of the philosophical and religious classics of India. When he first arrived by freighter in New York City, Srila Prabhupada was practically penniless. Only after almost a year of great difficulty did he establish the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in July of 1966. Before he passed away on November 14th, 1977, he had guided the society and seen it grow to a worldwide confederation of more than 100 ashramas, schools, temples, institutes, and farming communities. In 1972, His Divine Grace introduced the Vedic system of primary and secondary education in the West by founding the Gurukula School in Dallas, Texas. Since then, his disciples have established similar schools throughout the United States and the rest of the world. Srila Prabhupada also inspired the construction of several large international cultural centers in India. At Sridhama, Mayapur, in West Bengal, devotees are building a spiritual city centered on a magnificent temple, an ambitious project for which construction will extend over many years to come. In Vrindavana are the Krishna Balarama Temple and International Guest House, Gurukula School, and Srila Prabhupada Memorial and Museum. There are also major temples and cultural centers in Mumbai, New Delhi, Ahmedabad, Siliguri, and Ujjain. Other centers are planned in many important locations on the Indian continent. Srila Prabhupada's most significant contributions, however, is his books. Highly respected by scholars for their authority, depth, and clarity, they are used as textbooks in numerous college courses. His writings have been translated into over 50 languages. The Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, established in 1972 to publish the works of His Divine Grace, has thus become the world's largest publisher of books in the field of Indian religion and philosophy. In just 12 years, despite his advanced age, Srila Prabhupada circled the globe 14 times on lecture tours that took him to 6 continents. In spite of such a vigorous schedule, Srila Prabhupada continued to write prolifically. His writings constitute a veritable library of Vedic philosophy, religion, literature, and culture.